welcome to this week's The Inside Story. Today I'm delighted to have Jos Burton with me. He's the author of Be Useful. So, hi Jos.
Hi Taryn, thank you for inviting me.
How you doing?
I'm okay. It's been a bit of a strange time these last few weeks, so give time to reflect on things and consider what this is all about. And I think in some respects that's been useful for me actually.
So,
does that sound like a plug for the book?
Well, no, it should do. The book is all about whether or not you're being useful to yourself, useful to others, and how you can be more useful to people. So at the time of lockdown and, us all in a state of flux, it's a brilliant time to actually review whether or not you are being of use.
Yeah, and to rethink what I meant by that as well. It isn't always about doing stuff. Sometimes not doing stuff is being useful. And I've been thinking about this quite a lot during the lockdown. You've been told not to go out or not to go and mix with people. Okay, so how is not doing something useful? Well, sometimes by staying at home and not going out, you're saving lives. You're preventing the spread of an illness and disease, which has been a terrible tragedy for so many people. And it's just made me rethink some of that as well. But always keeping that as the focus. Is the world making good use of you? So by keep asking myself that question, it helps you to reframe the way you think about what you're doing, I suppose.
Yeah, when we look at how very, very busy, we have been in the past, as micro business owners, we're all kind of like, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And then suddenly there was a period where almost like the world stopped. And we were given a chance to kind of take stock, to review, and asking that question, how useful am I being to me right now? Is what I'm doing the best use of my time, of my energy, the best use of my mental skills? And I hope really that coming out of this, a lot more people will kind of have taken stock and gone, you know what, I'm not being kind to me, I'm not being kind to the world, and I'm not using my skills to the best ability. Do you think there'll be a shift?
Well, I think you've hit on something there that's been a bit of a sore spot for me for a while, this idea of busyness. And I've wrote a couple of articles about it. I got approached by the people from Training Zone about this because I posted a couple of things on social media about why busyness is a problem for us. And I wrote this longer article on it called "Is Busy the New Stupid?" We have this perception that when we're being busy, that's of somehow a higher status than someone who's not busy.
Yeah.
Somehow we take pride in being uber productive. And there was these posts coming, usefulness through productivity. And I have a bit of a problem with that. It bothers me a bit. And I thought to myself, I put this poster up, I don't know if you remember, which said, slow down, do less, and do it well. And a couple of people put some really thoughtful comments. It went viral for me. It went much bigger than I thought it was going to. So is it useful to fill up every minute of your working day with stuff? Do we think that we've had a good day if we've done lots rather than done less, but maybe done it really well, done something that's made a difference to somebody else somewhere or added value into people's lives, even if it's only one person's life that you touched? But I kind of had a bit of a mission over the last 3 or 4 months to kind of rethink about busyness and why we put so much score by how productive we are, rather than whether we've done something that's actually made a difference to somebody somewhere. And that takes me right back to why the being useful thing was so important.
It's funny because, as you know, I am always doing too much. And it's not because I think it makes me better than anything else. I just set myself way too many challenges, I think, and I'm my own worst taskmaster. But I found during lockdown, I stopped. And I said, no, my working hours are going to change. So at a time when really I was trying to bring in more work and trying to make sure that the bills were covered, like so many other business owners, I actually said, I'm going to do less. And it was a complete mind shift for me. So no weekend working. Instead of starting in the office at 7 in the morning and working through till 8, 9 at night, I start my day at 9 and I finish at 6.
Do you know what one of my contacts said that made me think, Taryn? Sue, I think her name is. She said she put something on. Think of it like eating your food. If you put a lot on your plate and then try to rush it because you've got so much to get through, how are you going to feel about that? What good is it going to do you? Whereas if you put less on your plate and slow down and eat it more thoughtfully, it's much better for your health, and you feel much better for it afterwards. And I think somehow that kind of resonated with me about the way we approach work and the way we approach life. If you try and cram in lots of things because you think that's where the value is by doing more. And the other thing I've been thinking of, Tom, which is linked to this, is the difference between doing and being. Do you know when we chose the title for the book, which was about to be useful?
Yeah.
Originally, I wanted to go with the question, is the world making good use of you? You talked me out of it and said, no, we need a shorter, more powerful one. You're absolutely right. One of the books I've been influenced by was the Do Purpose books by David Hyatt. And he calls himself a doer. He's very much a pragmatist. He likes getting things done. And I'm not so much a doer. So I thought, I'm going to drop the do bit, and I'm going to have the be bit, be useful rather than do something. And so for me, this idea of being has become more important than doing. You know, you can fill your life up with doings, but we are ultimately human beings rather than human doings. And I think if we always measure ourselves by what we do rather than by what we are, it's a different kind of way of looking at ourselves.
And that's a really positive thing in light of how many people we've been separated from. It suddenly puts everything into context that you can no longer be with people, and how hard that's felt. So I think you're absolutely right. You know, for me, certainly it's changing my mindset and changing my attitude. And you've said it all along that sometimes the less you do, the more productive you are. You know, you don't have to fill your entire day with it. And that's been the case for me. You know, I've fallen back in love with what I do because I've been able to say, that's right, the door can close now. And I mean, coming into having the new office bill meant that it was a nicer working environment as well, and just being able to change. So I think, you know, and I often pick your book up and sort of, because we designed it so that it, you know, it'd have the sort of little quotes, or you can sort of open it on certain bits. And I find every now and again I sort of pick it up and I'll flick open something, and I'll get a quotation, or I'll find a line, and I go, yeah, that's absolutely right. That's exactly how I'm thinking. And I love that about it. It's just easy to do it. So I mean, how did your experience in coaching lead you into coming up with the idea?
Well, I suppose the story goes back a long way, as you know, and this was because of a teacher that approached me something like 10 years after I'd left school. So this is over 30 years ago, to be honest. And when he asked that question, is the world making good use of you? It caught me by surprise so much that I struggled to answer the question. And that, because I struggled to answer it, it stuck in my head. And then after that moment, really onwards, as I got more and more involved in working with people, coaching and training and developing people, I would keep asking myself the question, how am I being useful in this? And trying to make sure that there was each interaction you have with another person somewhere, you're making a positive difference. Do you remember the section in the book, the difference between being useful and being used? Yeah. Where we talked about this, didn't we? Most people know instinctively when they're being used. They have this feeling that they've done something that they thought was going to help somebody or be useful in some way, but then it wasn't valued or appreciated. And part of what the book's about is making sure that you do something that you love or that you're good at and that you're passionate about, but also is going to make a positive difference on the other person or the people that you work with. So that means being mindful of what is important to other people and not just to you. And once you've got your head around this bit, Stephen Covey talks about it in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, doesn't it? Seek first to understand before being understood. If you know what other people value and what's important to them, then you may be in a position to help them. Equally, you may not, and in which case you won't end up being used because you'll say, actually, I can't help you. I can't do what you're looking for. And I'll say no to that. And I've got better at that as well, Taryn. I've got better at saying no to stuff where I think, I'm not going to do a good work here. I'm not going to be able to do what you need, but I can point you to somebody else who can. And which is why I've recommended a load of people to you, because every time someone comes across and says, Josh, you wrote this book, can you help me with it? I said, no, but I know somebody who can.
Yeah, I mean, that's as you get further on in business, that's something that is a skill you learn, being able to say no. And it's a really hard skill to learn, because we're programmed to say, yes, let me help you. Yes, let me do that. I'm running a business, I need income, I'll do it anyway. Right. So having the ability to look at yourself and go, actually, you know what? Okay, so that would pay a bill this month, but I'm not going to do a good job and I'm not going to enjoy doing it. So you know what? I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing to be able to do. To get that into your business life is a brilliant step.
Yeah, I think maybe part of it's with age. As you get older, you get a little bit wiser about what's been good for you and what hasn't. But I think also it's a mindset shift as well. Whether it's your boss asking you, or whether it's a client asking you, or whether it's a friend asking you, sometimes you're asked for things and you just kind of think, I don't think I'm the right one for this, or I don't think I'm going to do this justice. And I've learned to be able to say that a little bit better now. And again, being useful means finding the right type of opportunities for you, like you with the authors that you pick. You'll pick someone you think, yeah, I know I can work with this person and I'll get something good out of them, plus it'll be useful for me too. And ultimately, it's not useful if one party is not coming out of this looking very good. Yeah. It's only useful if both parties are going to get something beneficial out of it, where afterwards you think that was worthwhile. I'm glad we did that. And I'm very glad I did the book. I still now look at it, and I can't tell you, it's only a little book, but it makes me incredibly proud that we pulled it off. It means such a lot to me. And when I talk to my contacts or my clients about it, in fact, this last piece of work, Taryn, that I got, which was the filming work, which was incredibly well paid, I have to say, it came about because I was an author, not because I was a trainer.
It's funny, that, isn't it? I mean, there's you, there's Dom's, Parveen, have all said a similar thing. Without the book being able to kind of back up what I say I do, I wouldn't have had the opportunities. But I mean, you said it's only a little book, but actually, it's a little book that's gone quite a long way, isn't it? So nominated year before last for Best Small Business Book?
Last year, Business Book Awards, and I was so excited when you suggested that. I just wouldn't have thought of it, and I certainly would not have put myself forward for anything like that at all. In my mind, it's still a little book that's got my feelings and thoughts and experience over 30 odd years in learning and development. And when we first talked about it, my reason for doing this was to get the thoughts out there and to share them with people. But I hadn't thought about the awards thing at all as being something that I'd even get a sniff at. So the fact that it got shortlisted was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I had a wonderful evening that evening. I met some great people. Two of them I'm still in touch with, just because I went along and sat with people and talked to them. And what an amazing experience. That wouldn't have happened otherwise, I know it.
So how much of you in the end was in the book? I mean, I don't think there's anything in there that's not almost 100% you, is there?
Well, that's the funniest thing, although we collaborated on this quite extensively, didn't we? everybody that's read it, even people that I've not spoken to for many years, so old friends and people who've come across it, have said, as soon as they read it or dip into it anywhere, they go, it's you. It's just you. They say, I can hear you speaking. And it's weird because as the writer, I don't think I was conscious of that. I was just wanting to share my thoughts and get my ideas down on paper. And actually, that process of working with you on that helped me to clarify what I meant by stuff. Even when you'd suggested something and I went, no, that's not what I meant. But the fact that you said that has made me think, what do I mean by it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And when you challenged me on stuff or pushed back on things, that helped me to clarify my thinking, which up until before you actually write it down, it's kind of in your head and it's kind of floating around and you struggle to put it into words, don't you? But once you've actually got to formulate stuff on a page, that's when you get that greater clarity, I think. Oh, and I think I should mention as well, because although you and I worked a lot on this, my eldest son was a very big help on this with me. So Ben, because of his background and his education, and also I think because he's published work himself, although it's very, very different type of work, when he was going through the proofreading with me before you and I did the stuff together, he had helped me to refine what is my voice when you're writing it down, as opposed to just speaking it, if that makes sense. So Ben had been a very big help to me in terms of the style, I suppose. He cut out nearly 20% of my words. That's 1 in 5 words he cut out of it. And he said, Dad, you don't need that, you don't need that. You're saying the same thing twice here. And also he would say, he'd read a section, he'd say, so what's the point to this?
Yeah.
And, if he can't find the point, then I've got to go back and do some work on it. So having him in the team as well, I think is worth a mention.
I think it's, what you said there is really important, particularly when you're a coach or a speaker. You get used to addressing a room full of people. It's very rare that you're doing one-to-one unless you specialise in one-to-one. So when you speak, you're inclusive and you include the whole group and you're quite expansive. When you're writing, to then convert that into speaking to one person, because whenever you write, you're only ever addressing one person. And I get that with a lot of speakers. They'll see, as you all know, well, no, there's only one person that's reading this, so it's as you know. It's kind of bringing that focus in so that your reader does feel like you're just speaking to them. So, your son was absolutely spot on there. And making sure that, and there was a couple of times where you'd said something and my perception of what you'd said was entirely different to your perception of what you were trying to say. And it was great for both of us to be able to go, well, am I just misunderstanding you? Yeah. Or have you suddenly realised that what you're saying is what other people are perceiving it to be? And it was a great back and forwards, wasn't it?
I think for me, Taryn, from the whole experience, it's the collaborative process that is the most satisfying for me. I don't think I could ever be the sort of writer that could lock myself in a cupboard and then come out a year later with a finished thing. I just don't think I'm that sort of worker. And that's probably going to lead on to what the next project I want to work on is. Is this an appropriate time to mention it?
Go ahead, shoot.
So I've made a couple of contacts recently online through different projects I've been doing, talking about creativity and how the creative process works. And she had mentioned something about how when we think of a creative person, if you think of a creative person now, what qualities do you think of?
I always tend to think they are unconfined. They tend to be a lot more outward in their thought process. I think they tend to be easily distracted, but so much fun to be with. For me, a creative person is someone that's fun to be with, but that there's an energy about a creative.
Well, I think what the danger here is that there are a lot of stereotypes about what is creativity. And the danger with that is that a lot of people then think, well, I'm not like that, therefore I'm not creative.
Yeah.
And they rule themselves out of being creative. And what Hannah's done really quite cleverly is to look at different ways in which all of us can be creative, not just necessarily the arty types or the actors or the musicians or the crazy scientists like Einstein, having these brilliant and unthought of things from previously. And I think what it made me think of is, how do we think outside of the box? You know, when we talk about creativity, you think about thinking outside the box. But what if the box you want to think outside of is the creativity box? If that's the box that we think of as being creative, how do you think outside of that?
Yeah.
What that led to was a whole load of interesting conversations with other people, yourself and other people, about the different ways in which we individually are creative that's not in the stereotype, wouldn't be in that creative box. And what that led me to think of was, back to your point really, is for some of us, it's the collaborative process with people, different people, that sparks off something different and original. That's where creativity comes from, I think. So what we're looking to do over the next few weeks and months going forward is to find co-creators. So people who think, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I think sometimes I'm creative when I do X, but I'm not necessarily a creative type. So what does that bring out of me? And I thought, if we could compile a series of conversations, discussions, little mini projects into a book form that then has various sections on it in the way that different people are creative, and share that with people, I think it might be something that could be almost like a little coffee table book that you could dip into brightly colours, pictures, diagrams, poetry, songs, things that make people think about different ways they have created something that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise.
It's a fascinating solution. I think once you get into that, and you're gonna start, people are going to be coming at you from left field, and you think, I never even saw that one coming. Because it is. We think of. For me, it starts in school.
Yes.
Because you've got the creatives, they're the arty ones, or the writers, but and then there's the sporty ones.
That's right.
And then there's the kids that don't fit into any of those.
Yeah.
So they're told they can't draw, or they can't cook, they can't sew, or they can't design. They've got no love of the English language. So where do they learn their creative outlet? Where do they go to find that spark inside them that makes them creative?
I think you've hit the nail on the head here. Do you remember that amazing TED talk by Sir Ken Robinson, who died recently, apparently? It's one of the most watched TED talks ever. And it's hilarious because he ad-libs pretty much all the way through it, I don't know if you remember. But he says about how education, how schools, the formal system can stifle creativity. Because, as you say, it kind of reinforces the stereotype quite early on, where it rewards people for academic prowess, but not necessarily for creative skills. And what he said was, that system of education was created hundreds of years ago and hasn't shifted a lot. Whereas now, if you think for the future, the people we're going to need in business, in public sector services, we're going to need people who are creative, who can think about broader and wider concepts. And if we don't help youngsters to realize how they can be creative at a much earlier age, then actually we're going to stifle it before it's even had a chance to grow. So I think you're right. I think, as you know, all three of my sons work in education. So they're all teachers at different levels. My youngest son is primary school, my eldest son's secondary in a private school, and my eldest son works in tertiary education. We all talk about this, the importance of educating our young, but not just necessarily in the academic subjects, which are important, don't get me wrong, but also in the importance of thinking creatively around those subjects, rather than just learning it by rote. So I think there's a wonderful opportunity here. And I got all excited about it during the lockdown, thinking this could be something that actually could make quite a profound difference. So I'd love to see where it leads us, basically. And hopefully you'll be an invaluable steer on that for us.
Me and your lad will be there with our black marker pens.
Yeah. Well, that's how you be creative, isn't it? Saying what will and what won't, and how it's going to work, how it'll join together appropriately. And I know you have your views on this too, so I'd love to get your input on it.
Yeah, I do. For me, it's I'm very much aware that so many entrepreneurs are dyslexic, have other learning maybe challenges, or they just learn different ways, and I think if we're not careful, we're not going to help bring them on. You look at so many things that we've come to rely on have been created by people that at school failed.
Yes.
And I would hate to see that side of things. My youngest son is a chef, and he's only learnt that creativity in the last 2 years. Before that, he had no idea. He went from job to job and just didn't find anything that triggered him. And he found that trigger washing up pots in the kitchen.
There you are, you see.
Suddenly, he came home one day and he went, "Mum, do you know I've got a real flair for the laying food out on the plate? Everyone said when I do a dessert, it just comes together and looks beautiful." And suddenly, that was it. That spark had gone, and now he's just flying through and having an absolute blast. He's gone from washing pots to running his own kitchen in Spain in the space of 12 months. But school home economics classes never bothered him. I think he made a fruit salad. You're right. I think this will be brilliant. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so hopefully over the next few weeks, that's something we're going to try pulling the ideas together into some kind of structure. I know from the advice you gave me with my book that we'll need to build a kind of a skeleton first of all, which we can then put the meat and the bones. Sorry, I'm mixing my metaphors a bit here. And I think that structure, for me anyway, is very important. When you first helped me with that, the difference that made to my thinking, which up to that point had just been all over the place, was really key, and I've learned a lot from that. So hopefully we can take some of those tips into this book. But what's exciting is we haven't got a predetermined end point.
No.
It will depend a lot, I think, on the other co-creators that come forward and say, I think I can get into this as well. And the more that happens, I'll be excited to see myself where that leads us, rather than thinking of the end product and working backwards.
I'm quite looking forward to blank pages in there, actually. For me, that I can almost see it in my head. It's just a lot of sort of way out stuff and fun designs, but then just some blanks as well. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think I'm excited about that, and I'd like to see where that leads us to. Maybe it could become something that could be a little bit of a game changer, hopefully.
Brilliant. Well, anybody that wants to buy Be Useful can get it from all good bookstores. It's available online, and I think you've got some signed copies as well, haven't you, Jos, that you can... I do have,
yes. If anybody wants one, please get in touch.
And if anyone would like to have you there for training their business, what is it? What do you specialise in, Jos?
Well, the key areas that I've been involved with are management and leadership are the main ones for me. Where you've got people who maybe have moved into a position because they're good at their job, but maybe they've not had much experience of managing or leading other people, and they need a little bit of extra support in that. Or maybe you've been managing people for quite a while, but you're looking for that next step up into more senior roles. I've worked with a lot of heads of department and director level people, and I find that once you can talk them through that thinking process, I'm not the expert, But what I do find is by having those quality conversations with people, they're more able to take that step up and achieve more through it. So yeah, I love my work, and I'm very lucky to do something where a passion can combine with something that actually can make a difference.
Right, so if you think that Jos can help you be more useful, then get in contact with him. Jos, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it, and good luck.
It's a pleasure. It's always good talking to you, Karen. Thank you.